Hey, thanks for checking out my channel. Thanks for checking out this video. Today we're going to take a little bit of a break from the plein air adventures we've been experiencing throughout the spring, summer, and fall. And we're also going to take a break from some of the other activities. I've had a lot of commission requests, at least from for my volume, my normal volume. I've had quite a few commission requests roll in. And in addition to that, we've been painting a lot of holiday ornaments. But today we're going to just kind of go back to our roots. We're going to do a little tonalist style painting, which will probably border on the edge of impressionist as well. And we're going to paint a little farm scene, a field with some trees and a sunset. It's going to be from reference photo, which I'll put in the upper right-hand corner of the screen here in a moment. We're using a typical palette, at least for the channel here, plus or minus some colors that I might normally include, going from top to bottom: dioxazine purple, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, sap green, yellow ochre, and then cadmium yellow medium. And I'll add in some white in a little bit. I'm going to try to avoid using any white at all in the beginning. And then as needed, I'll add in some white as we go. I'm going to be painting with 3 brushes on a 6x8 sheet of primed linen, which is just simply affixed to a table covered with paper. And when it's all said and done, it'll be just like one of my plein air paintings where I peel the tape off and there's a nice, neat little border. So I'm going to go ahead and make my way through, adding in the basic shapes, working from dark to light. And then we will start working on softening the edges and lightening selective areas of the painting before we wrap up. We should finish this painting in about a half an hour. And this is, as mentioned, painted from reference photo that I've kind of kept filed away for a while. I had a long drive, a work-related trip over a year ago. And when I was approaching this area on a county highway, the scenery just struck me. So I took some photos of the sunset and stored them away with the intention of using them to paint this sort of painting at some point in time. So I think it's important as an artist and as a painter, as we are very practical sometimes, trying to help clients with their needs and adapt to the needs of the marketplace that we serve. We have to kind of go back to what we're drawn to and listen to that little voice inside ourselves that connects us to our soul and the type of artists that we were meant to be. We have to listen to that. Those scenes, those projects that we're drawn to, that kind of call to us when it's quiet and we're not being nudged one way or the other, pulled in one direction or another. Those projects, those scenes, those tasks that we are drawn to do that don't take any energy. Paintings like this for me, when I work on these, time passes very, very quickly. I could work on a scene like this for hours and it'll seem like minutes have passed, if any time at all, for that matter, has passed. And I think it's really important to kind of stay connected to this kind of work so we can, one, stay connected to the reason with which we enjoy creating this kind of art, but also to avoid things like burnout. It also enriches the rest of our lives. When I'm able to knock out a piece like this, particularly if I'm able to do so earlier on in the day, today it just so happens this is being filmed later on in the day, but that's okay too. But in any sense, when I have the opportunity to create this kind of work, it does enrich the rest of my life. My interactions with family members and friends and colleagues and clients are just better. I feel like I've used my time well and used it wisely. It's almost like getting in a good workout at the gym or having a great conversation with an old friend. It just spills into every other aspect of life. At least that's from my experience. So right now we have all the dark shadow patterns in the darkest shapes, which essentially is the row of trees in the background. We have this tall, big tree mass off to the right, and then some of the darker clouds, cloud shapes up in the sky. And we also have the midground and foreground. We're going with a low horizon here, but you can see that sap green is really thin, a lot of linseed oil mixed in there, and a little bit of yellow ochre. So, and also a little dioxazine purple. So we're going to keep that ground plane pretty light, not as light as the sky, but probably the second lightest plane that is going to be present in this painting. You can see on my palette there, my little makeshift palette, I'm mixing up some sky blue, there's some ultramarine blue, titanium white, which I added to the palette. Now I'm adding just a touch of yellow ochre, and I'm just going to make this as light as I can with a little tin of that greenish hue that sometimes will happen just before sunset or just after sunrise to the lower portion of the sky. Sometimes will permeate above the clouds into the middle part of the sky as well. So we'll go ahead and put that in. We'll lay that in. The goal here at this point is just to cover every inch of this tiny little canvas or sheet of linen. And then we'll start making some adjustments. But once again, we'll get this done in less than half an hour. And it's definitely time well spent. As I make my way around the sheet of linen here, I'm taking some care as I fill in the shapes to avoid mixing the paint on the canvas. I want to avoid creating mud as much as possible. Now, if that should happen, no big deal. Like we're seeing here, I just pull some of that purplish green down into the ground plane that's a little bit lighter and use it to create the suggestion of a shadow and also the suggestion of maybe some textures that have been created by some of the tractor wheels or the ruts or the grooves that you might see in a field where there's actually some active farming going on. Now, we're in the middle of winter when I'm filming this, or at least the very beginning stages of winter. At least we're experiencing winter weather. It's actually, I guess, technically late fall. So, as mentioned, and as if you've been following along, if you have on the channel, I've been doing a lot of plein air painting, which is my very favorite creative activity to do. As luck would have it, with the work schedule being what it is, and with commitments to family holiday activities and other things, I'm not getting out as much as I had been, and that's fine. Because it's kind of like when you think about an art practice, when you're painting nearly every day, it turns into almost like a cyclical event. And you could choose to dwell on the fact that you're not getting to do the types of projects that you ideally would like to do, or you could look at the work that you're doing, whether it's commission-based work or studio work, which might be a second or third choice under ideal circumstances. If you were to stack rank the sorts of creative activities that you're going to do, like I do in my case, I try to look at opportunities to do those other types of work and approach it in a way that takes the lessons that I've learned by painting from direct observation under more difficult circumstances in many instances due to changing light conditions and harsh weather and other obstacles that might come into play when painting on plein air, dealing with some of the risks associated with hiking through the snow, for example, or more difficult hikes that you might experience, or running into wildlife or sometimes other hikers on the trail, for example. These could be uncomfortable scenarios on occasion. So, there are lessons that are learned from that while trying to execute a painting that can be brought back into studio work like this. So that's what I'm trying to choose to focus on here. I also want to create a good painting. And, I've been thinking about this scene for quite a while. As mentioned, the reference photo I originally snapped well over a year ago while on a work-related trip. So, I'm hoping that I could maybe take the mileage that I've kind of logged, painting the miles and miles of canvas that I've covered, albeit some of those were gesso boards and so forth, but you know what I mean. And also, the experience solving different problems while painting in the field and elsewhere. And hopefully those will bleed into the effort to complete this painting, and hopefully it has a positive effect on what the final results are. See, if not, no big deal. There's no pressure here. I'm painting purely for the enjoyment of painting, while I have 2 or 3 commission requests that are on the backlog, and just using this as an opportunity to kind of charge my batteries, if you will. And at the end, if I have a painting that I'd like to frame and hang on a wall, or have the opportunity to sell if somebody were to express interest in it, that's just icing on the cake. So now I'm going through and reinforcing, and have been for quite some time now while I was talking and painting, reinforcing the darker values associated with those vertical planes that are intended to represent the trees. As discussed in Carlson's guide to outdoor painting, those vertical planes are going to be the darkest within a landscape, and that's pretty predictable. And it really is going to be the case in times or in scenes like this one, where most of those vertical planes are going to be backlit and essentially in shadow. Now I mixed up a lighter bluer purple, and I'm going to go right over those darker cloud shapes. Those do need to be significantly lighter than the darkest values within the painting, because they are receiving some light from the sun, and also they're a bit translucent too, so they're gonna be reflecting light from all directions. So they're not going to be nearly as dark as the other darker values within this painting. So we'll lighten that up a little bit, probably take another stab at that as the paint dries a little bit, and go back to reinforcing the darkest of darks. I'm going to incorporate some blues and some greens into this larger tree shape in the foreground, because while that will too be amongst the darkest values in this scene, because it is closer, you're going to see a little bit more of the greens and other similar hues within the shape itself, within that shadow. So you'll see some greens, some blues, some purples within that shadow pattern there that's making up that larger tree. And while I'm painting this indoors in studio in wintertime, this photo, the reference photo that I took that I'm basing this painting off of, was actually snapped sometime in late spring, early summer. So the trees at that time did have some foliage on them. Unlike now here in the Northeast, unless they're an evergreen tree, obviously they're barren. So we're going to go ahead and continue to reinforce these shapes and make some adjustments. I'm thinking, looking at this scene, I want to create some variance on those distant trees. I'll probably raise up a couple of tree shapes on the left-hand side of the painting here, and kind of create almost like a steelyard design or composition here to some degree. And we'll play with that a little bit as we make progress here throughout the rest of the painting. One of the nice things about working from your own reference photo is if you take some good notes, or at least keep a good recollection of the scene that you witnessed live, you can account directly for some of the qualities of the scene that stood out to you. And oftentimes they may differ from what is captured with your camera. For example, in the reference photo that I took of this scene, this roadside field, when I was traveling through Maryland and Virginia, that's actually where the scene is located. The upper left-hand portion of the sky stood out to me because it was a really interesting light shade of blue, very pale, almost royal blue, with subtle hints of greens, which I imagine probably were related to the yellow rays of the sun, maybe reflecting off of particles in the sky, creating that little greenish tinge in some areas. Now, the photo itself actually creates like a golden orange halo within that upper left-hand quadrant. So I'm consciously making the decision to alter this scene to reflect my recollection of that quality that stood out to me. I thought it was really interesting how that band of clouds toward the middle of the sky, kind of hid the transition to some degree from the sun's golden rays and the orange tints that you normally see at sunset, and quickly transitioned into the late day blue sky that you see toward the top of the cloud mass there. So I want to capture that here within this painting itself, and that's what I'm aiming to do. So gradually lightening that area and modulating the values within the cloud masses themselves in order to play off that effectively. As you can see here, selectively bluing out some of the areas within the cloud mass, just a little too heavy. And also, I think the shift to a lighter blue and lighter purple will play well off of the reflected orange and golden light off of the edge of the cloud. So I'm going to bring that into play here, and I'm kind of liking how it's looking early on, and we'll see how that sits in the painting as we make our way through. As is the case normally, I'm kind of making my way around the painting, not attempting to finish any one section at a time. It all has to be interrelated parts that work well together. So we're making our way around from the top to the sides, to the bottom, the foreground, the background, the middle ground, the sky, and the ground plane, and the tree lines. We're just making our way around systematically, trying to tie everything together and create an interesting and appealing painting in the end. That's the goal. So it's coming together pretty good so far. Have a little bit more work to do here. I'll probably focus in on reinforcing that large tree mass, and also selectively darkening some of the tree line areas in the background, as that will help increase the perception and the feel of the intensity of that sunlight in this beautiful sunset scene here. We're going to make sure we leave some of the tops of the trees lit, so there'll be that lighter purple and a little peekaboo kind of aspect working with some of those orange areas as well. And we'll take that same purplish green color and we'll bring it into this tree in the foreground and reinforce some of the strength and the weight of that darker value that makes up that tree mass. And we'll also pull it into the shadow areas here. By darkening these areas, it'll further intensify the feeling of warmth and brightness within that sunset. And it'll also lighten up those clouds as well, because the relationship between those clouds and the other shapes within this painting to these darker areas that make up the darkest of the shadow patterns within this scene will appear to be a little bit lighter. They'll shift in relationship to these darker areas. From here on out, now that all the major shapes have been laid in, we created a little bit of a steelyard effect by raising up the tree line on the left-hand side of the painting and enhanced the contrast between the darks and the lights. It's going to be a matter of just playing with edges, with the different planes, creating interesting textures. Here you can see I'm playing with some of the shadow patterns in that ground plane with the intention of creating the illusion of a field that's been plowed and tilled, which you'll normally see kind of those grooves that might be created by the tractor wheels in a field. And we're going to make our way around the painting as we work to finish up here, paying attention to the edges of the major shapes, and also opportunities to build additional contrasts and intensity in the sky, and also three-dimensionality, trying to make sure that especially those areas in shadow, that they don't appear too flat. Part of the way that you do that is, especially in those tree shapes, being very attentive to creating a large variance in shapes that make up the sky holes. Not only variance in the shapes, but also the colors. So I will play with this for a while until I get it to the point where I feel like it's working well within the painting. And that's really what we're focusing on right now. Temperature variance, warm versus cool, edges, and three-dimensionality, creating or enhancing the illusion of three-dimensionality, hopefully drawing the viewer into the painting and keeping them there for a while. So that's the goal. We're going to wrap up here in just a little bit. Stick around and watch the process by which I actually pull the tape off of the linen. You'll see that nice, crisp, clean border and the finished painting in just a few moments here, after I kind of work my way through and around the painting and put the final strokes in here. Okay, I think we're getting close to finishing up. I'm going to pull the tape off here in a few seconds. Inevitably, there'll be a few touch-ups that I'll think of incorporating once this process is done. But check this out. This is one of my favorite things about painting with linen sheets, whether they're taped to a board and I'm painting on plein air, or I'm in studio like this and I tape them to a wall or to a board affixed to my easel. This nice little white border that forms really gives you a sense for how the painting is going to read once it's framed. You can keep the border edges visible when framing, or you could take the edge of the frame right up to the painting itself. Kind of becomes a matter of personal taste, and it's quite situational as well, depending upon the painting and the frame. But this really does a nice job of giving you an idea of what the painting is going to look like once it's framed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and share and subscribe. Here you have the finished painting. Also, just a reminder, I am now an Airbnb experience plein air adventure provider. Check me out on Airbnb and check out my finished work on my website at thomasmichaelneiman.com. Be well.